Craig Coffey, welcome. Thanks for joining us today, B2B in San Diego style. Craig has flown all the way in from Cleveland, Ohio, lovely city, and I got the tour from Craig himself.
It's a wonderful city.
Welcome today. Craig actually is the marketing communications manager for Lincoln Electric. They are the welders. They build the welding equipment that we all know and love. And Craig, thanks for joining us today at our session of luminaries for B2B.
Yes, I'm very excited to be a luminary. It's my aspiration in life to be a luminary.
Well,
San Diego reminds me a lot of Cleveland.
I bet it does.
It's got a lot of similarities. You guys have a lake. I saw that. You call it the Pacific Lake or something like that?
It's a big lake.
Yeah, it's a nice lake.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the bar set high for luminaries here. I love it. So Craig, let's talk about what's on everyone's mind today, and I think that is the notion of change.
Mm-hmm.
And there's change in the political environment, there's change in the economic environment, there's change all around us, but more importantly as it relates to B2B marketing and how our customers actually buy from us.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last year or so, what do you think have been the biggest changes you've seen in your business in the way folks buy from Lincoln Electric?
Well, I think that it's not so much the way that people buy, it's more a realization that there aren't two types of people out there. One that has their day job of buying the way they buy their consumer products online, and one that goes to their office and buys in a different way. It's the same buying journey. I mean, people tend to research before they buy. They want to know, they know more about the products they're buying before they ever contact somebody about what they're interested in. And it's been kind of a hard realization for us to understand that people aren't bipolar in the way they purchase things. So we're trying to get smarter about facilitating that purchase in a way that's easier for them.
But what specifically has changed in that over the last maybe year or two in terms of what folks are coming to the table with and the knowledge they have? Because it sounds like they have more knowledge. That's what I'm hearing time and time again.
Well, here's a good example. So Lincoln Electric so we make welding equipment. So on one side we're a manufacturing organization, but we're also an organization that has the oldest welding school in the United States, possibly the oldest welding school in the world. I'm not exactly sure.
Wow.
And the way people have chosen to learn has changed dramatically over the years. I mean, I sat with a guy who is and I'm going to blank on his name, but he's the guy who created Make Magazine. He's really started involved in the maker movement, which is basically self-guided learning.
Yep.
We have invested heavily in our digital channels from a video standpoint because we recognize that people don't necessarily want to go to a classroom situation to learn how to do things anymore. We have people spend, I think the last year we had 5 million minutes spent on our YouTube channel. And I would have to say the preponderance of that has been on how to do something, how to MIG weld, how to TIG weld, how to do those things. Versus wanting to go sit down in a classroom setting and learn at a pace that really kind of facilitates the learning by the slowest guy in the room.
Sure. The traditional.
Yeah, the traditional way. So, and things like the maker movement are really kind of are at the forefront for making it easier for people to do what they want to do and creating spaces and environments where questions can be asked or people can learn at a pace that suits them. And it's interesting and it's fun, and I think that's where another generation of our customer base is going to come from, which kind of leads into product development.
Well, actually, before we get into that, let me press on something a little bit, because I think you're articulating something that we're seeing a lot through folks who are really on the leading edge of B2B, and that's the notion of building thought leadership and trust, and this notion of educating first. Before you're asking them to buy your stuff, you're giving away that this is how you do welding, right, or in a particular aspect. So what are you focused on there, and how do you know that it's actually working?
Well, I guess from a data gathering standpoint, we look at views. We look at the things that work, and we try and double down on the things that are working, and we try to eliminate the things that won't. So,
give me an example.
So video is is a good example. So we do a lot of videos that I guess they'd be considered content marketing, but Joe Polizzi would hate me for saying this, but content marketing has been around for 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
And there have been companies that have been doing this, and it's the teaching is selling kind of a model. And we know that people are very brand loyal to welding equipment. We know that if we get them on our equipment early, we'll have them for life. Whether or not they're going to be a professional welder or not, there'll be a small percentage that does, but if they do, they'll tend to stick with the stuff that they learned on it. And hopefully they'll have brand loyalty and brand affinity to us. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
No, it does. Let me press on that. Is there any particular style of video, just actually getting very tactical right now, that you've seen folks really gravitate towards? Is it the B-roll? Is it professional? Is it a particular style of welding that all of a sudden everyone's consuming?
It's funny because I cherry pick good ideas as much as I possibly can from industries that are totally outside of the welding business. So from a product standpoint, we're getting ready to launch a business-to-consumer website, which is a pretty aggressive play for us, and it can be, I think it's going to be a positive disruption for the way we do our business. And the videos that we're using to support those are what we're calling the Zappos style video. And the idea is, look, if we can tell somebody what the features and benefits of our product in under a minute, that's better for them. I mean, if somebody can detail the advantages of an Adidas sneaker on Zappos, then we can do it about the three things about a welding machine that will appeal to a certain audience. We've got to be able to articulate that. So that's something
we don't have the attention span anymore.
Yeah, we don't have the attention span.
Yeah.
And so we can do a long, drawn-out, overly edited and amped up video, or we can do something that's very straightforward on a white background that says, hey, if you're looking for this machine does these three things very well, and this is the machine, and this is the price point it's coming at, and kind of take it or leave it. So that's one side. That's promotional. But then there's, if you look at the things that people are really consuming, it tends to be the more stripped down stuff. I mean, I think there's a reticence to believe something that's overly produced. So spending a lot of time and effort putting into cutaways and fades and things like that doesn't work as well as, hey, I'm a guy, I'm going to teach you about this thing in welding, and if you pay attention, you can learn from it, and it's very straightforward. We've done some we were lucky to have some really cool celebrity endorsers, guys like Brian Fuller, guys like Chip Foose, women like Jessie Combs, who is absolutely a rock star, and they're great in front of the camera. And people learn from them, but and they have a ton to teach, but I think that people also like to learn from guys who are just like them.
Sure. They can relate.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have guys right out of welding school, or there's a guy named Scott Spiriance on my team who knows more about welding than probably anybody in the U.S. And he'll do quick and dirty videos about, hey, this is what you want to do, this is how to set up your machine, this is I'm going to give you a quick 3-minute lesson on something. And it's simple and it's effective and it gets eaten up.
Yep.
We love that.
Yeah, I love it. Let's pivot into outside of how the buying journey's changed in content marketing into data and measurement.
Yeah.
So I know everyone's on a different continuum in terms of the maturity around reporting and data. I'd say that's actually a two-part question. One, where are you in that continuum, if you would? And secondarily, what do you measure and what do you look for from your analytics and what you have set up from a data perspective?
I don't think we're different from a lot of organizations about our size. The data that we measure is dollars right now. We don't have a lot of analytics from a marketing perspective that directly tie back to those dollars, which I think is a critical flaw in the way we go to market right now, and something that I've been raising the red flag about for a while, and I'm starting to get some traction on, because as we talked about earlier, I don't want to see another 2008 come around and have the people on my team having to explain what they do and why they and their impact at the bottom line. Nor do I want to have that uncomfortable conversation with my boss.
No one does.
No one does.
And that's why we're here today.
My reason for pursuing better analytics and more tie from the things we do to the end sale over a long period of time is very selfish. I want to be able to say that when you work with my team, you will see a net benefit, and that net benefit can be articulated in some positive percentage.
Okay, so let's talk about what your panacea would be. What is your ultimate? If you could get to X, what would you be looking at? How would you be looking at it?
Boy, I would love to.
Dream for us a bit.
The dream would be marketing, communications, IT, and sales all singing Kumbaya together in the same.
I can hear it right now.
Yeah, and it's not that we have an adversarial relationship. It's I think that by nature our metrics are different.
Sure.
The things our goals that we're working towards are different, and we've got so much overlap, and that we're kind of in violent agreement about the things that we need to do, and it's like we're arguing about that we want the same thing, but we're saying it in different ways. We've got to just start if everybody's rowing the boat in the right direction, we're going to get there. And it's hard, because the bigger the organization is, the harder it is to move the battleship.
Yep.
And if we've got IT who's worried about security, and sales is worried about the bottom line, and marketing is worried about driving business to sales but needs IT in order to facilitate that journey, we've all got to get together, and we've got to get better at it. I'm lucky, I think we agree in principle, but the other side of it is there's only so many hours in a day, and this is in addition to the things that people are already tasked with doing. So this means additional expense or outside resources or additional headcount. And those are all things that, I think, going back to 2008, I think people are reticent to put those things out there still. I think there's still a little trepidation about, or over conservatism about spend.
Forgive me for doing my job here, but what would you specifically be measuring? What is the dashboard? What are the reports that you would want to be looking at to justify and even grow the impact you have on your organization?
So in one part, I'll give you a specific example. So in addition to the welding equipment that most people are familiar with, the little red boxes that we sell that join metal to metal, we also sell very expensive robotic integrated robotic systems. So the kind of things that you typically see in an auto plant that is very expensive. We're talking $500,000 spend or more. And as I mentioned, the more expensive a system is, the longer it takes for people to make a decision on that. I want to be able to measure the content that I create to help drive people to a decision. I'm trying to anticipate the things that will help influence their decision making or move them along a buying journey. I want to be able to measure every step of the way who's consuming that.
Channels, content,
exactly.
at the individual level to purchase.
At the individual or at the company level,
Okay.
but the individual level is better because individuals buy, individuals influence, and walking to a company door and knocking on the door and saying, hey, I'm the sales guy, I know somebody from your company was looking at our website, that doesn't seem like it's going to apply. But if you can go and say, yeah, I know that this particular guy at this level, who seems to be the right person to be either influencing or making a decision on a substantial system, seems to be making all the right moves and doing all, and has all the, as you said, digital body language to say that I'm ready to I'm ready to have a conversation. That's the guy you need to talk to if you're around. That's a lot more realistic for us because I think that we've got very, very educated salespeople, guys. Our typical tenure for a salesperson is well over 10 years.
Wow.
We've got a lot of guys who've been at Lincoln their entire career, and they're very good, they're very knowledgeable with what they do. But I think, like any salesperson, they tend to be account managers versus salespeople after a while. They get a couple of very, very big, very good accounts that are a substantial revenue source for our organization, and they babysit those accounts. And I can't blame them because that's what they're measured to do. They're measured to incrementally grow those accounts. And the risk of leaving that account on its own for a while, so you can go out and hunt for the ones that are new.
It's risky.
That's a big risk.
Yeah.
But if we can work to a point where I can say with confidence that with a relatively minimal time investment, I can show you a pre-qualified, marketing qualified lead that you can go after with a high degree of assurance that they are ready within a certain amount of time to close to finish the buying journey and to become another one of those long-term accounts that you manage. That's a lot. I think that's a lot more powerful for a guy who's got a limited time attention span.
Yep.
So that's the goal that we want to. I think we all want to get to. It's just getting there that's the magic thing.
Well, and let me ask you this. I think what I've been hearing a lot on the street is the notion of the revenue marketer. So the question I always ask this: is it fair for folks who sit in the marketing role to be responsible for revenue and profit contribution?
Not only fair, I think that we should demand it. Certainly, our organization, the vice president of sales and marketing is one of the same, and that's indicative, I think, of probably a lot of B2B organizations. God bless the kids going to school right now who thinks that sales is part of marketing. If they go to a B2B organization, the inverse is true. Marketing is part of sales. We are not necessarily subservient, but everybody is subservient to sales. Engineering is subservient to sales because we're all driving to the bottom line. And the sales guy is the guy who's there, the tip of the spear. And if we aren't moving the needle in the right direction, then sales is the first to take the beating, but marketing is probably the second after that.
It's interesting. That's an interesting perspective, and I think some folks would jump on that, and probably a few folks may argue. But let me ask you this: how, Craig, within Lincoln Electric, has the view of sales matured over the years? Marketing from early to where we are today.
Yeah, I think that has changed rapidly, and I hope that it had something to do with that change. I've been with Lincoln only a couple of years now, so I'm a relative embryo.
I'll give you credit for it.
Thank you.
I'm sure
it's thank you. We went from. This is unfortunate, and it's nothing against Lincoln Electric. It's been the case at a lot of business organizations that I've had the pleasure to work with. is that marketing departments have, in a lot of cases, devolved into the make it pretty department. I need an ad, I need a brochure, I need this stuff, and it's all driven by typically, it's sales tool driven. I need the sales people and the sales organizations that I need these things to sell. This is the stuff I need to close the business. And I think there's still room for that, but the thoughtful consideration about things like content marketing or the way that people buy and the changing buying journey is something that I think that, especially when you have a sales force that's been doing field sales for a long time, they might not take the time to think about.
At the executive level, at that C level, VP level, do folks within Lincoln believe that marketing has a much larger impact on the ultimate sale, or are they still being educated to that effect?
I think it's a blend, but I think probably now more than ever that we're in that case. We've got a CEO who's relatively new as well. Chris Mapes is our CEO, and he's much more brand and marketing oriented than I think the typical Lincoln CEO has been, because he came from the outside. He came from an outside company called A.O. Smith, and I think he recognizes more than anyone else has in the recent past that there's change coming, or change has been going on for a long time, and we can choose to get on board, or we'll suffer because of it. So we're lucky to have that kind of executive endorsement. I'm lucky to work for guys who are open to change, which is, I think, probably the best thing you can look for in a director or vice president is just, you keep bringing the good ideas to me, and everything takes, it's not just, and I'm trying to take the guessing out of it.
Sure.
So, talking to guys like you, being involved in organizations like the BMA, helps you kind of take the guessing game out, because I can show people, this is a company that's like us, and this is the thing that they did, and if we do the things that they do, there's a good chance that we'll have the same result that they did. And that stuff is stuff I think that it's difficult to do. A little bit about my organization. We have 23 people in our marketing communications department, so we're the size of a decent sized ad agency.
Yep.
And we tend to do everything, we do as much as we can in-house because it makes sense for us. Lincoln's a company that's very vertically integrated up to and including their marketing organization. And we like that. The problem with that is that you get a little tunnel vision. And so I think that bringing that outside view to the inside has been an important and good breath of fresh air for the company. And it's, like I said earlier, I steal blindly good ideas that I can get from other organizations. And typically I don't have to go to our competitive set to do that.
But let's dig into that a second, because I do think for such a storied brand, if you will, in an industry that is a little bit, how should I say this, a little bit slower to move to market, if you will, which is fair because of the industry that you're in. What have you guys done that has kind of pushed the limits of marketing in an organization like Lincoln?
Well, I think that from a marketing standpoint, one of these, if we have to do to elevate the brand, is elevate the position of what welding is to people. We did a campaign called Made Possible with Lincoln Electric. It kind of shined a light on those things that people kind of take for granted that welding has an effect on. So my boss said it best. He said, if you take a tape measure and you pull 10 feet out and draw a circle around yourself, unless you're in the middle of a cornfield or on a baseball diamond, you're going to hit something that's welded. And we know that if you're in North America, that because of our market position, there's a better 50% chance it was welded with one of our machines or one of our consumables. That's huge. People take for granted that things are welded every day. And there's people generally that have to do that. And this is something that it's a bigger problem than Lincoln can fix, but we've got to start fixing the stigmatization of working with your hands. If you go to a country like Germany, you can have a welder or a tool maker or a guy in a hands-on profession living right next door to an accountant in the same neighborhood. And they make determinations early on that we're not going to stigmatize those things. They're both very necessary functions to make our country work. And we've got to start showing people that
equal contributions to society.
It's the American dream is that every kid does better than their father does. But the first millionaire I ever met was a plumber.
Yep.
So, and he did high pressure welded pipe with Lincoln Electric stuff. So thanks, Mac.
There is a way.
So yeah, so there's definitely a way to do it. I mean,
Yep.
And he's a business owner. He definitely decided that there's money to be made doing the things. Yeah, but you've got to look in those places that I argue with my older brother all the time about whether or not the world needs more IT people or more people who can do plumbing and electrical work. But when the zombies come, guys, you're going to want a plumber, not an IT guy.
I love it.
So
we're definitely using that. It's fantastic. But no, it's a great, we could probably spend an hour, not even necessarily debating, because I wouldn't necessarily debate that. I mean, there is tremendous value in that, and you're right, it's the perception that comes with the profiles and jobs that folks are fulfilling, and even the notion of reinvesting in vocational skills as a way to get folks there is a way to pull that stigma out, I would assume.
Yeah, and Lincoln's really down with that right now. And the other thing is, what a welder is actually changing a lot too. I mean, I was here in San Diego visiting an organization called Arc Products that makes what they call an orbital welding system. It's one of the several products they make, which is basically enables pipeline welding. Now, the pipeline business is blowing up globally right now. There's never been more demand for pipeline welding there has been before, but there's never been a larger shortage of guys who know how to do that, because it's a very specific, very difficult, you got to have a certain mindset, and it's almost like the Navy SEALs of war.
Yeah.
I mean, it's blood guts, and it's a system that basically uses what they call a bud, a circle of pipe, and make the reliance on the person welding less important. So to help a guy get better at welding in some of the most extreme conditions. Now we're doing a lot of perfecting of things like that, but the welder of today is not necessarily the guy with the torch. It's the guy who's operating what they call a pendant, who manages a robot that's welding in a small cell that's making higher quality parts. The demand for lighter weight cars, lighter weight equipment, smaller tolerances, and so we don't have as much waste, less waste because of rework. All these things businesses have humongous pressures on them to be better at doing what they do, and welding is an integral part of that. I mean, if there's anything that's really important, it's welding. And if it's, you've got companies like what's the one? Elon Musk's company. What am I thinking?
Tesla.
Of? Tesla.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing things different,
Yep.
and they're doing with robotic welding systems. And
Lincoln Electric machines?
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay,
But yes.
my guess is yes.
Yeah.
So, and let me ask you this: outside of probably convincing a lot of folks that they get the hell out of marketing into welding, which I like, let's pivot into roadmaps and having seen the success and challenges that we've all seen in the position that you sit in, Craig. What would you recommend to folks out there that is not on their strategic roadmap that probably should be right now?
Well, certainly, if you don't have marketing automation on your strategic roadmap right now, then you've got to go to a conference and you've got to talk to people in your peer set, and you've got to figure out a way to get that on the table. It's taken me the better part of a year and a half to get it on the table, and now that it's on the table, I'm not going to let it go. I mean, it's one of those things that has to happen.
So it's producing for you.
The effort of getting it on the table is producing for me. We're still kind of in the infancy of actually getting marketing automation to produce for us, but I think now that we've recognized it, you can't ignore it. Once you put it out there and see that there is value to it, and get everybody to agree that wouldn't it be great if we could do these things, people can't ignore it, especially I know that you just came back from Dreamforce, and our sales manager came back from a manufacturer meeting. He talked to a guy who just expounded the virtues of Salesforce.com. He said, he finally asked the question, what does it cost you to do this? Because that's the question he's going to ask. What's the investment we're going to have to make in Salesforce, and what's the net benefit of it? And I think the number he came back with was $4 per salesperson per day. That's the price of a latte that he's going to buy before he meets his first customer.
Wow.
And the larger your sales force, the bigger the price tag. But when you put it in relative terms, that's a small price to pay. When you start looking at it as a capital investment, yeah, those things get scary. But when you start looking at it down to brass tacks at a relatively low number per day investment for a huge benefit of being able to know where your customers are in their buying journey over time, they become pretty easy questions to answer.
Yep.
And I'm not a proponent necessarily of Salesforce.com, but of the investment in marketing automation. I'm agnostic to the platform, but open to ideas. I mean, we brought in. The way I got marketing automation on the table at our company is I brought in a guy who was totally tangent to our business, totally outside of it. Works for a company called Avery Dennison, who most people know they make sticky stuff. They make labels. Yeah. They're a big industrial company, $6 billion industrial company. A lot of people don't think there's a lot of money in sticky paper. And he implemented a marketing automation platform, and he saw a 4,000% return on investment.
Wow. And
he walked through. I just stood back and let him give a presentation. He gave to my local BMA chapter, and I just said, "See," and they go, "Oh,
okay."
That's
so marketing automation. Anything else?
Boy, off the top of my head, that's the thing in my crosshairs right
Okay.
now, so I'm
Well, it's a hot
kinda
topic, right?
Yeah.
You know, it involves technology, it involves content, it involves delivering on what your customers need of you, you know,
Yeah.
thought leadership, all those things that are kind of a culmination of smart B2B marketing.
Yeah, but you bring a good point too. I mean, I think that we're still in a very cluttered world right now. There's a lot of things coming to people in a lot of ways. So just because you have marketing automation doesn't mean you can take your eye off the ball of creating good content that actually appeals to people. I mean, it has to be creative. It has to be have the ability to break through the noise.
Yep.
And you know that because you're measuring it. You're doing marketing automation. But if you don't, you still got to put the effort into hiring creative people and doing creative things. But it still comes down to people.
You got to produce something.
You got to produce
outside the
you gotta-
technology.
You
Yep.
got to produce something. You got good writers. You got to do video. You got to invest in all the things that we as consumers kind of expect. Because if it's not there, if it's absent, it's not found.
I love it.
So,
With that, Craig Coffey, truly appreciate your time. That was fantastic.
thanks for having me.